This is the French Tech APAC podcast. I'm Bill Poorman. Again, we are here at the Women's Forum here in Singapore, and we are talking to a wide variety of executives and entrepreneurs that are coming through here and telling their stories to the delegates here. We are very fortunate to have a Singaporean legend here today. Please, Violet, could you introduce yourself?
My name is Violet Oon. I'm been eating professionally for 50 years. And I started off as a journalist. I used to sing opera, and I sort of gave my life's work to curating, celebrating, and collecting Singapore food and Singapore recipes. And that's what we do in our restaurants. We have 5 restaurants. And this year I got the Lifetime Achievement for Outstanding Contribution to Tourism by the Tourism Board of Singapore. And I do think that the culture is about, food is not only about deliciousness, it's about life, it's about stories, it's about where you come from, where you're going in the world.
And you're a national ambassador for Singapore's food, you said?
They sort of call me the food ambassador.
I think you are.
Yeah.
And your daughter is here today, Su-Lyn.
Hi.
Could you talk a little bit about what you do as well?
Yeah, so I lived in Los Angeles after I graduated from university. I lived in Los Angeles for about 10 years and had a clothing line in Los Angeles. And then I moved back to Singapore and I traveled back and forth for a little while, still having the clothing line. And then I eventually sold it to my business partner. And I started a restaurant with my mother and my brother based on kind of like her life's work and the recipes and a lot of her legacy. And we operated the restaurant for 2 years, and we had a business partner come on board, somebody that was interested in what we were doing and shared our vision of wanting to celebrate and share Singapore food with the rest of the world. So collectively, we co-created a restaurant group called Violet Oon Singapore, and our business partner is Manoj Majani. And so I think we have that vision of bringing Singapore food to the world, and I think slowly, one step at a time, hopefully.
We have 5 restaurants in Singapore now.
So far.
Okay. And any outside of Singapore?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
Very soon.
Yes, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're here at the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society. You were asked to speak in front of the entire room of delegates. That's about 800 people, I think, about what it's like to be women entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs working mother and daughter. So, Violet, I'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about what both of those things is like?
Well, I've been so blessed that my 2 children wanted to preserve what I have in a restaurant. I mean, I failed about 20 years ago, and I think failing is part of success. Okay, then, but what's exciting is that they wanted to do this, and I think what the forum brought out is that I don't play the mother act on them, and how do you have dynamics of a of a business where the children sort of take over. But this was fortunate because they didn't take over. They started something with what I had. Maybe, Su-Lyn?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, I think we saw something in the tradition and the recipes that we wanted to preserve. And our purpose, my brother and myself, our purpose was to really kind of preserve and protect these recipes that were so precious to us that we grew up kind of enjoying. So I think it's interesting because she never asked us to go into the family. She never said, do something with my recipe. Maybe she hoped in her heart, but she actually never ever said that to us, because I think it's quite a huge task to take on, because it's not as if she's handing over a business to us that's already existing. So I think but strangely, I think, we felt that calling ourselves, and a lot of people actually asked us, why do you go into F&B when it's such a hard industry to go into? But I think, growing up, seeing her share about the food, talk about Singapore food, and we have a different relationship with the food. We see it as the ties that kind of bind us, and we see it as stories about Singapore that we can share, and we see the food as such an exquisite delicacy that we want to be able to kind of bring to the global culinary stage. So I think that then comes along with working with the family, right? And what's that going to be like? And I think that was a question that was asked on the panel. What is it like working with your mother? What's it like working with family? And I always say that, growing up, I found my mother so irritating,
Yes.
I mean,
but
like everyone.
No,
yes,
but I told my son and her that you're supposed to find your mother irritating. If you don't find your mother irritating, there's something wrong with you,
Or wrong with the parenting.
Yes, wrong with parenting. I mean, then you're mommy's boy, So, I mean, I found my mother hugely irritating, and people found her charming. This happens. And
yeah. So I said, I found it so irritating to her, but I actually feel so happy that we're working together because I get to see her in a completely different light. You know, I get to see her not as a mother, but as a colleague, as a peer, and I get to see her work ethic, and I get to see the way she approaches work, her commitment to excellence. And I think, you know, throughout my life, I think she's always been probably my biggest fan, and she's always been celebrating me the whole time, but she's also my biggest critic. So I think to actually work with someone like that is the best because I get to hear the good and the bad, and I trust her. And I feel that, you know, that lends itself to a great experience, even though I still find her irritating. So
I think
but, you know.
maybe they wanted us to share our story because, you know, we are in Asia, we grew up. And a bit about my background. My father was hugely liberated for his time. He was like Lee Kuan Yew's generation. My mother was a career woman, and in those days, in the late in the 1940s, women did not have careers. And, you know, she was not like Shirley Conran, where you had to be a superwoman. When you had a career, you didn't do any stage of work at home. And that was expected. And so I was, in 1949, when they had me, they decided to have only one child, whether it's a girl or boy. And in Asia, that never happens. You know, even in the West, that never happens sometimes. And because they wanted this child to have every opportunity, not money, but opportunity. And my father was in Shell, and we lived in many countries, and I went to 7 schools. It was always an adventure. And you must remember, I grew up as a university student in the late 1960s, where they had the student movements. And I'm the cohort of that generation of Hillary Clinton, where women burned the bra, had miniskirts. And in Singapore, my generation, who were educated, is, you know, in addition to throwing out the bra, they threw out the wok and the ladle. They refused to cook because it was a sign of bondage to the men in their life. I mean, I had a friend who was sent to London to study, and the girls always did ballet or piano, you know, nothing else, and or nursing or teaching, to take care of her brother. And I never realized how much she resented it. Like, a lot of women had to go through that. But I didn't have to go through that. So I did cooking as a hobby. It was like, you know, I learned to cook like a man does. You know, a man cooks for fun. A woman learns to cook as a chore. So that's how I started. And I think I was brought up to be thinking on my own, to be, you know, to be very brave. And I think we were asked, is that what I imparted on you, Su-Lyn?
I think we were asked if she intended to raise me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes to the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Because not every family comes up with these values.
Yeah.
And acts on them.
Yeah.
and I was encouraged to argue with my parents. And, you know, my father brought me up to fight to what I believed in, even if I didn't agree with him. So I think that was very unusual in any family in the early 1950s.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world, maybe.
So upbringing informs entrepreneurialism in many ways.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it encourages you to be daring. And I think being an entrepreneur is not easy because you don't always succeed. Failure is part of it. And maybe because I'm in the creative world where, you know, people who are creating, like a movie star, however famous you are, the next one is not guaranteed to be a success. So you're used to going through that process. And I think Su-Lyn, you went into fashion, right? That was not easy as well. But she was so fortunate. She did very well in Hollywood.
I mean, but back onto that, I think, you know, in terms of the journey as an entrepreneur, I got to see it firsthand. I got to see what it was like for her. And I think that process of seeing the failures and the ups and downs, you know, I mean, to see the sacrifice that it takes, to see the heartbreak, I think that, but at the same time, the flip side, to see someone being very resilient, someone still not kind of wavering and still being committed to excellence and committed to actually doing an excellent job and committed to actually honing her craft throughout this whole time. And you know, both of them as a separate thing. You know, I mean, it doesn't affect the failure, doesn't it kind of define your work. I think it kind of taught me something about it, but through the failure, I think she used to speak to me a lot about her ideas and stuff. I would kind of be thinking that's not going to work, you know, but that probably honed me as well to kind of, you know, refine me a little bit. And like, I went through like business school when I was
there was a business MBA, you know.
Okay.
Definitely. No, and I think, I mean, I failed as a restaurateur, you know, because when you're...
About 20 years ago, actually.
You know, like in the 1990s.
But then now you've come back. I mean,
when you're in the
you're doing it again.
Yeah, but I think what happens is that I always continue to pursue my cooking, my love of food, and that's why I continue to represent Singapore. And I was sharing that actually, if you do something you love, you have a head start over somebody who's doing something they don't love.
Yes. Yeah.
The same profession, because you're not motivated by normal things. You just love it, and I think it's the greatest blessing to be having your hobby as your career.
It gives you that passion that drives
Yeah.
you through the adversity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
if you
yeah.
truly love it
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
But I think for me it's a little different. I think for her she loves it, but I think for me, I love food. I love eating, and I love fashion. When I went to fashion when I had my clothing line before, but I think now for me it's a little different. It comes from a sense of purpose. I feel there's a purpose in why I'm doing this, and I think that drives me, because I think the desire to protect the food and preserve the recipes, and I feel that there's a purpose in actually wanting to kind of like share this with the rest of the world. I think that is kind of what drives me now.
So
which
a
is
cultural
little,
mission.
yeah,
But
kind
she,
of.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely when you have different people working together. And I think family is a lot of successful businesses have to start as a family business, because you can be totally honest with your family. But let's say if it's a colleague, how do you say some things?
Right.
You can't. You either make an enemy for life or something. As a family, we can fight and and have a
But some families are going to be successful at this,
Yeah.
and others,
are not.
they probably should not be in business together.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean,
So
so,
I
correct.
think-
So it started off as a family business for us, but kind of it evolved. You're right to say that, because I think as a family business, it gets you this far. But I think, when we had our partner and everything come on board, it changed the dynamic. It now is not that family, because I really
Yeah.
do think as a family business, we could only get so far.
Yeah. It
You
has
know,
become
in terms
corporate.
of
Corporatizing.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
So I think that part is the most important part in actually growing the business, being able to at some point of time pull back away from that. And I think yeah.
I think they always find the greatest challenge in any business is to grow from small to medium, because it's not only practical things. It's a mental mindset. It's a breaking of a mental mindset.
Well, and you have to let go a little bit as
Yes.
well. I know your time was short. You've had a wonderful presentation already. Thank you so much for coming in today, Violet, Su-Lyn.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
us.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having us.
All right, take care.
Thank you.